guys, it's Rockaway here, and I'm back with another tutorial. And today we're talking about grids. We're talking about grid design and why grids are important in design. All right. Basically, when you are doing any sort of graphic design, whether it's page layout for something like a poster or a book or a magazine or whatever you're creating a design for, it's important to think about how those elements get placed on the page. And one common mistake I see people make is they will just kind of place things wherever with no real thought given. But as humans, we like to see things organized. We like to see things structured. Even if we break that rule sometimes, it's still more pleasing to the eye when something is organized. And this is where grid design comes in. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at how to create a grid, how to use a grid, how to make a grid work for our design. Okay? And like I said, even though this is a rule, rules can be broken, and you can go outside of the grid and, change it up to find something that works for you. But let's look at least how to do that. So week 14 is the tutorial folder, and I'll have that available for you. So in the fonts folder, we're going to install these fonts, okay? So just shift select, double click, install the fonts. They're going to pop up all over the place. It's going to go crazy here. Install, install, install. Get them all installed. I probably have them all on here from last time I did this, but that's okay. I'm going to just hit them anyways. Here we go. They're all installing. Okay. If you do have this issue, again, I had them installed already. I'm going to just install anyways. Okay. So there we go. Very important step. Make sure you have the fonts, because otherwise you won't be able to follow along. Then what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to InDesign. And I already have it open here, but you're going to open it up. And once InDesign is open, we're going to create a new document. Now, before you just kind of jump through this window and make a new document, I'm going to show you something pretty important for what we're doing. First of all, we want to go to Print. We want to be on a letter-sized sheet. You'll notice in here it says picas. You don't have to change this, just to show you that it is actually letter size. We want to make sure facing pages is on, and I'm going to explain why in a second. And we're going to give it 3 pages. Okay, and we're going to create that. All right. You'll notice we start with a blank page. We want to get our Pages palette showing, so we're going to go to Window, Pages. It'll show up. I like to have it off to the side so I can easily switch between pages. And we're going to just jump in here and go to page 2 and 3, which you will notice they are beside each other. Okay, they are sitting next to one another because this is a spread. So imagine you opened up a magazine and you were looking at a magazine. This is as if you open the pages and they're sitting next to each other. Hopefully that makes sense. Now in InDesign, that's tricky to say, in InDesign, there's a lot of ways we can work on our pages, but if there is something that we want to have consistent between all of our pages, InDesign has this feature called master pages. Okay, so things like, think about, like page numbers, or maybe a header or a footer that's on every page, or in this case, a grid that we want to appear on every page. You'll notice that in the pages, they have these little A's. And that is telling us that these pages right now are using master page or A master, okay? Whatever we put onto A master, these pages are going to use. And we can have multiple master pages. We can add a bunch more. We're going to just focus on the one that they've given us, which is A master. You don't have to do it this way, just so you know. You don't have to do it this way, but this is the right way to do it. Okay, so we're going to go and double click into a master by double clicking the page. And it'll look like we are on the same two pages that we were just on down here. But what we've actually entered is the master page. Okay, so we're going to set up our grid for this tutorial. And the way we're going to do this is quite simple in InDesign, because again, InDesign is built for people who are into this desktop publishing stuff. We're going to go to Layout. We're going to go Create Guides. We're going to make sure our little preview is turned on. And now what we got to do is we got to decide how many rows and how many columns we need. So for this design, we're going to go 4 rows. Okay. We're going to go with 3 columns. Okay. This is a pretty standard 12-cell grid. Okay. The gutter is the amount of space between the blocks. This option is very important. Okay, this is, do you want the grid to fit within the margins of the page, which is this purple area, or do you want them to fit within the entire page? And you can see that that changes the grid layout. So we want to keep it on margins. If it's not on margins, change it. And we're going to hit OK. All right, so we are now still inside the master page, as you can see. But now if we go out, and let's say we go down to the bottom here where our actual pages are, if we double click the pages, you will see that they have automatically had the grid created for the pages. And the reason for that is because, again, we made it up in the master page, and that means that every page we add to this document is going to have that on there automatically. It's pretty nice, it saves time, and you only have to do it once. So if you had a book that was hundreds of pages, every single page would have that same grid. All right, so you set it up once and it's good to go. Now we're going to get going with our layout a little bit here. We're going to get an actual layout started. So there's a couple things that I wanted to cover in this tutorial that are important for you to get better with InDesign. The first thing we're going to do, again, is the grid itself. We're going to look at putting in a title here. And I want you to follow with me here. We're going to take the Type tool, and we are going to make a block like so that fills these top 3 blocks. Okay? And I'm going to do this. I'm going to say top 8 PSVR Games 2019. Okay, so top 8 PSVR Games 2019. All right. So now we're going to want to stylize this text. And by the way, I should have mentioned this, with InDesign, you have to create a box for your type. You can't just start typing like you can in Illustrator. You can't just click and start typing. You have to make a box for it. And that's, again, useful because you want this block to fill those 3 cells perfectly. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to stylize this text that's here a little bit. So first of all, we're going to take this text and we're going to center it within that box. Okay, and what I mean is vertically. We'll do horizontally after. But with the box selected, okay, so I was in text mode. I mean, I could do this first, I guess. Basically, you just want to select the text. You want to put it to the center. Okay, so I'm on the text tool, center, then it'll be centered on the page. I want to switch to the selection tool. And up in here, you're going to see that we have options for how the text is aligned within that block. So if I want it to be centered, I click this, and it moves it to the center of that box. Okay, so we are still within these 3 grid blocks, and that text is nicely centered within that block. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my text tool, and I'm going to just kind of dress up this text a bit. This is not a lesson on typography, okay? So it's not going to be amazing or anything, and there's better ways of doing this, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take the font, or yeah, the PSVR font, and I'm going to look for a font that we installed that is going to look decent for this design. I believe it was called, I just want to double check before I say it, I think it was called Over There. And you can type, yeah, you can type in here to search it, Over There. And I'm going to bring up the size, so I'm going to go into the type size, and I'm just going to go like this until I feel that the size looks good for that particular text. Don't worry, it's going to look bad for now, but there it is. Then we're going to take the words top 8, and I'm going to change that font to Geometric 231 Heavy BT. Okay, so Geometer 231 HV stands for Heavy BT. And I'm going to bump that size up a bit, maybe about 18. And I'm going to actually reduce the amount of space between top 8 and PSVR. So the way you do that is you just drag your mouse from the end of PSVR and you include the word top 8. And then you're going to make a leading adjustment. Okay, so a leading adjustment changes the amount of space between the lines of text. So right now it's set to auto. We can start at something, that was way too low. Something like 30 is even too low, but I just go like this. There's a little trick. You can put your cursor in there and just push the up arrow on the keyboard, and that will allow you to change it manually. So I'm finding around 62 looks pretty good. Now again, this is not the right way of doing it, but I want to put top 8 maybe over on the side here, kind of in this space. I'm just going to tab that over like that. Doesn't look good, I apologize. Yeah, we'll leave it for now. And then Games 2019 is going to be kind of tricky to select. So what we'll do is we'll go from the end of it here and grab it down. I don't know if you saw what I did there. I went from back here and I dragged down to get that line. We're going to use this same font and show you a little trick. If you use the Eyedropper Tool, okay, whoops, that was the wrong Eyedropper Tool. Sorry. Shortcut is I. Whoops, I'm really messing up here. If you select that text and use the Eyedropper Tool and you click the text you want it to become, you'll notice what it does is it automatically becomes that text with the proper spacing and everything. And what we want to actually do with games, we could say games of, I wasn't thinking, games of 2019, we want it to actually fit in here. Okay, so again, this typography is not amazing or anything, but we're going to make it a little bit nicer than it was. So we're going to take this text, I just bring my cursor up so it's including the line above, and then I'm going to make another leading adjustment here. And I remember that little trick with the up arrow, I can just do it manually like that. Okay, now another thing we'll do is we'll go to the start of games and we will tab this over. We can even use the space bar. That, again, that's not the greatest way of doing it, but it's going to look something like that. Okay, I'm going to take the words PSVR, or the letters PSVR. I'm going to select them. I'm going to go to Window, Color, and I'm just going to go into the color. I'm going to go to these 4 lines here. I'm going to go to CMYK. And I'm just going to set the color of PSVR to cyan. So that was 100% cyan. Okay. So those 4 little bars will the 4 little lines will get you there. CMYK 100%. Make sure your black is 0. Okay, so now we got a title for this spread. top 8 PSVR games 2019. Okay. And next what we need to do is we need to actually put the information or the blocks for the information for what this page is going to contain. Now, by the way, one thing that is useful is if you ever want to look at your design and how it's actually going to look when it prints, you can press the W key on your keyboard, and what that'll do is it'll hide all of the guides and all the extra sort of things that are showing there. And it'll allow you to switch back and forth between a preview and the actual layout mode. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is how we can create what are known as linked text boxes. So we're going to take the text tool, and what we want to do is we want to create a text block for each one of these 8 cells. Okay, so watch. I'm on the text tool. I'm going to create a block like so, and then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to keep on doing it for each of these blocks. Now, you're not going to actually see them, but they're there, trust me. The reason you won't see them is because they don't have a stroke or a fill color or anything like that. So you just have to trust that they're going to be there. You'll also notice that InDesign snaps nicely to the blocks, to the guides, sorry. And so then once you have those, now if I just kind of go to my selection tool and I drag a selection over, you will see that those 8 blocks are there. Okay, they are there. So what we want to do is we want to actually get the information that's going to go into these blocks. All right, there's a lot of ways we can do that, but I'm going to make it as easy as we can. In the file, the folder, I got a file called info. So we're going to double click that. And that's actually going to open with Word. So we'll just wait for Word to open up. You can also go to import, you can import text. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe you can place text. Not 100% sure if that still works. Used to be able to import text from a text document or whatever, but again, I haven't experimented with that for a bit, so I don't want to say that's a good way of doing it or not. But while we're waiting for Word to load, all right, we might as well get our image that we're going to use in this design as well. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to load up, I'm going to just use the magnifying glass. I'm just going to zoom back a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the picture that we're going to use. It's going to be kind of the dominant image for this spread. And so we're going to go to File, Place, and I'm going to actually go inside the folder into Images. It's just a single image called PSVR. We're going to hit Open, and you're going to see this little preview, this little thumbnail of what the image is, and we're going to click, and the picture is going to come into InDesign. Now, you'll notice that it comes in at the resolution of the image, so it's gigantic. All right, and that was probably not the best way to do it. If you remember from an old tutorial on the Intro to InDesign, there's a lot of ways to place images into InDesign. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete that. I'm going to get rid of that. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the rectangle frame tool, and I'm going to set up a block for it. Okay, so I'm actually going to set up a block somewhere around here. Okay, and I use the tool there, rectangle frame tool, to put that in. And then with that selected, now I'm going to go to File, Place again. And we're going to go to PSVR, we're going to hit Open, and you'll see now that it places it within there. Now the problem is it's still really big. But what we can do now is, because we already have the block in place, is we can go to Object, Fitting, and we can fill the frame either proportionally, or we can fit the content proportionally. And in this case, I'm going to fill the frame proportionally. And you're going to see that the girl with her PSVR headset fits the block nicely now. All right, and that was a lot less work than trying to scale down the image to fit, you know, properly from such a huge size to start with. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this image and we're actually going to overlap her picture, kind of something like this to start. We're probably going to move it anyways after, but you'll see that now we've got an actual dominant image, and obviously anything past the edge of the page is going to get cut off, but I would always add a little bit of bleed on the edges, a tiny bit. Again, we're going to be adjusting it anyways, but it's going to look something like that. Okay, and I just press Command 0 to kind of get a full view of my page. And remember the trick with W where you can kind of switch between a preview of how it's going to look versus how it is being laid out. You'll notice again in InDesign that pictures look chunky, pixelated, because they are just little previews. They're not the actual images. So if you do want to see a better quality preview of the image, you can go to View, Display Performance, and you can go to High Quality, and you'll see that that picture becomes much clearer, much nicer, and now we got a better idea of what that's going to look like when it's printed. Now we still have these 8 blocks that we haven't used yet. All right, and so what we're going to do now is we're going to get the information for this page, and so hopefully your Microsoft Word or whatever word processing program you have has loaded up. We are going to go there and get the information for this page. This is all of it right here. Okay, it looks like a lot. I'm going to just press Command A to select it all, and then I'm going to press Command C or Control C on the PC, and I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to go to my first block that I created, which is this block right here, and I'm going to paste it. So Command V is going to get pasted in. Now it looks horrible. It looks really bad. And the reason it looks really bad is because basically it just took all that text, got rid of all the formatting on that text, and it just threw it in here into the first block. So what we need to do is we have to actually link the blocks so that the text is going to flow from block to block. And that's pretty easy to do with InDesign. And you can do a lot of things with this. It's a really powerful feature. You can have a page where the text flows dynamically across the page however you want. You'll notice that in this first block we got this red plus sign, which basically is telling us that text is going out of the block. So what we got to do is we got to click that, and it's asking us where do we want the text to continue. So it's going to continue into this next block. Then we're going to go here, and we're going to click the next one. We're going to keep doing this until the text flows throughout the 8 blocks that we created. Now you notice we got a bit of an issue here with the image. The picture is actually overlapping, so what we're going to do is we're just going to pull this over for sort of temporarily, and we'll fix that after. Okay, so you can see her elbow cuts off, and we don't want that, but we'll fix it after. Okay, so for this text now, if we go back to the first block and we double click it, you'll see now that this text, we can edit it and we can select it. So if I click in here and I press Command A, you'll notice that it selects all the text for all the blocks, okay, because they are all linked. It sees them all as one text block, even though it's across 8 separate cells. Okay, we're going to change the font. In this case, we'll leave the body text as Minion, I suppose, but we're going to have to reduce the size of it. So we're going to just bring it down a couple points. We'll go down to 10 point, which is pretty small, but that should work. For the headings, I'm just going to put a space after the heading by hitting return. For the headings, we want it a little bit bigger and a different font. So we're going to use this Geo Heavy BT. And remember the little trick with the eyedropper? Shortcut is I. And just click the text you want it to become. However, it's way too big, so we're going to bring down the size. And again, we can use a trick with the down arrow if you want in that box I also don't like it centered, so I'm going to put it to the left. One last thing I want is this title to be blue, or well, cyan. So I'm going to go up in here to our color. That should still be open. If it's not, go to window color. CMYK, 100% and 0 black. And now we have our first heading set up. Okay? Now the rest is easy, because we're going to go down to the next one, which in this case is Arizona Sunshine. We're just going to take that space out of there. We're going to move that line down. We're just going to select this using the eyedropper. We're going to click this title, and it will automatically take on that attribute. Then we're going to go down to the next game. I'm going to hit return a few times. I'm going to move the next game to its block. Same thing. I'm just going to the eyedropper. Okay. And I'm just going to do this for each one. It's pretty repetitive, but I'm going to basically set it up so that all the information and all the blocks look consistent. Okay. Now I could spend a lot more time making this look better, because I'll admit it doesn't look that great. But really the whole point of this tutorial was to show you how grids work and how you can use them to your advantage in your designs. Okay, so we're just going to keep going here and do each one. Now this biohazard one is a little long. I'll show you a little trick for that. Kind of one that we've already used somewhere else. We're going to go to text tool. You notice that this text goes down too far, so we're going to just select it all. And I'm just going to go to my leading. I'm just going to move it up like that. Okay. Then we're going to do the same thing for thumper and stifled. You notice that we got more than 8 games. I didn't plan for that. I think actually this was a top 10 list, to be honest with you. Oh, no, I guess there was 9. Kind of weird. So then same deal here for these titles. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but once you've done it for one, it's very repetitive. It's the same sort of series of steps. You just select the title that you're selecting for that game, and then eyedropper, click the one you want, and away you go. All right, so now if I press W, it doesn't look great. I'll admit it's very empty still. I would spend a lot more time dressing this up, making it look better, but you'll see that it's nicely locked into the grid there, and it's looking decent. Now, with this image, if we wanted this girl to actually come into this text to make it a little more dynamic, okay, so I'm going to go to the magnifying glass. I'm going to zoom out a bit. I'm actually going to scale this block up a bit just to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to make this girl overlap into this text a bit. It'll make it a little bit more of an interesting design. So in InDesign, if you want to scale things up, if you want to actually, resize images like I just did right there, it's not like in Illustrator where you just pull the corner of the block and it does it. What you have to do in InDesign is you have to select the block, then she'll hold Shift and Command and grab a corner and then let go. All right, and then it'll scale it up however you want. Okay, so there, that looks good. Now, you'll notice that the girl's arm comes into these text boxes. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to actually create an area that this text can kind of flow around. Hopefully that'll make sense in a sec here. But I'm going to go to the Direct Selection Tool. Direct Selection Tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in, okay, with the Direct Selection Tool. I'm going to grab this point here. Whoops. I'm going to grab the point, the corner of the text box. Okay, and I'm actually just going to do this really quick by pulling it over like that. Okay, so we got kind of a, now we don't have a rectangular box, we got kind of a diagonal box on this end. Okay, now the cool thing about this is you could go to the pen tool and you can actually, just like in Illustrator, you can add more points like so, and then using the direct selection is I can pull these points around so that my shape of the box that is holding this picture matches her profile pretty closely. Okay. Then we're going to take this box. So I have it selected. I'm on direct selection. Got it selected. I'm going to send it, or object arrange, and send it to the back. Okay. So now this picture is behind the text, and you'll notice that the text automatically responds to that. You'll notice the word dynamic, for example, cuts off there. And if we really want to sort of exaggerate this, right, then what we could do is we could take this and have it wrap around the, not around the boxes, but wrap around the object shape. Okay, so did you see how I did that? I selected this block and I chose this right here, wrap around object shape. And what that'll do is it'll force the text, anything that interacts with that line, okay, it will not be allowed to pass that line. So you can see that the text looks a little more custom there. You know, it's wrapping around that image a bit, which makes it look like it was meant to be together. All right. So I think that's where we're going to stop for this particular tutorial. We covered a lot. And obviously this is by no means finished. It would still need a lot of work. But it gives you an idea of how powerful using grids can be. Rather than just placing stuff randomly and hoping it looks good, when you have a grid in place, it's going to give your design a much more organized and sort of consistent look rather than just, you know, like I said, just kind of placed all over the place. So use grids. It'll improve your designs, especially when you're doing page layout. But you can use this for all sorts of designs, whether it's posters or flyers or whatever. And it's relatively easy to set up a grid that you can just kind of have there. And nobody says you have to follow it perfectly. You'll notice, like with this girl here, she's going out of the grid. All right? You can have elements that go outside of the grid. It's just, if you have a grid in place, it's going to look like things are consistent. And even though you can't see the grid in the final print, it's going to be there subliminally. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Make sure you save that, and we'll see you guys next time.